is this right here. So Bob Arum, obviously Top Rank had a show at the Fountain Blue in Vegas this week, and Bob Arum, he did an interview with my boy Sean Tatel. Shout out to Sean Tatel, one of the best in boxing media, and my right hand man in the boxing media game. One of the best there is, if not the best. Apart from I think highly of myself, but he's like the top of the top. He did an interview with Bob Arum, and he got Bob Arum to reveal some information that Bob has not revealed to anybody else. Bob Arum said that with Turki Alalshikh and his growing influence in boxing, with Dana White's emerges now working with Turki Alalshikh and TKO boxing, that now he's pivoting away from Turki a little bit. Him and Dana White have a not so good history with each other. And so obviously you can't expect Bob Arum to work with Dana White based on past history that they have and past comments Dana's made in the past about Bob. So he's revealed that he's been talking to Al Haymon and about working with PBC to make the big fights as an effort to compete with Turki Alalshikh in Saudi Arabia. So let's talk about it and let's try to make sense. We're going to go to screen share, all right? So just bear with me here. So we'll go to screen share, right? Because Bob Arum, he's talking about working with Al Haymon, which if you've been following boxing for the last 10 years, at least at the minimum the last 10 years, you know that's crazy news because Bob Arum and Al Haymon, they have a long history. And I think of the old quote from Abraham Lincoln, one of our old presidents here in the United States. He said, and I quote, "The best way to destroy an enemy is to make him a friend." And so while I do think Bob Arum and Al Haymon are going to work with each other, it's also still a form of future destruction, as Abraham Lincoln eloquently stated in the past, right? So, look, Bob Arum said that he wanted to work with Al Haymon, or that he is working with Al Haymon, that they're talking about working together. Before I even get into those quotes, let me take you guys back about 9 years ago, all right? May of 2016, you had Bob Arum suing Al Haymon, literally suing him in PBC for an antitrust lawsuit, which is kind of ironic because you can make the argument that with Dana White involved in Turki Alalshikh trying to create a monopoly in boxing, that they're on the verge of maybe violating some antitrust laws that we have here in the United States of America. So it's funny how all that works out, but now they're going ahead and they're talking about working together. So what do I make of all this? Because like I said, 9 years ago, you had Arum suing PBC for $100 million. Now he's talking about making fights with them. And truth be told, as a boxing fan, I'm happy about this. I'm happy about this scenario because really and truthfully, I've always said that it'd be amazing if we can get the because Top Rank's really good at developing fighters. They have the best track record in boxing of fighter development. If we get the fighter development of Top Rank and then the promotion for big events of PBC and put it together, that would kind of be the perfect boxing promotion company. And I think that's what we might get for a moment in time here with Bob Arum and Al Haymon if what Arum is saying is true and they are talking about working together. So a lot of things to unpack, a lot of layers to unpack. Now, the reason why I think Bob Arum has pivoted in this direction is because Bob Arum has realized that, okay, look, Dana White's involved now. He doesn't get along with Dana White. Dana White is a guy that, as far back as 2020, this is an article from 2020. Dana White said this. He said, and I quote, this is Dana White referring to Bob Arum. He said, I quote, and I don't mean to curse or have profanity here, but this is what he said verbatim. He stated, I quote, "I fucking hate that guy." He then went on by saying, and he's talking about Terrence Crawford because, Terrence Crawford and Bob Arum had gotten into dispute over money back then. He said, and I quote, "Pay your fucking fighter what you own. That's your job. Bob Arum is a piece of fucking shit." And this is like one of the many quotes that one of the many things that Dana White has said over the years about Arum, disparaging comments, negative comments that don't reflect well upon Bob Arum. So you can't expect Bob Arum to work with Dana White with their history and all the ways that Dana White has talked down about boxing and the boxing business and the power brokers of boxing. So Bob is pivoting away from Turki because of that. Now, Bob is not going to stop his fighters from fighting on Riyadh season cards. He's still going to allow, Riyadh season and his fighters to take these big money offers in Riyadh season, but he's looking more at trying to create an environment, an ecosystem, so to speak, where fighters don't want to go fight on Riyadh season, where they rather fight on Top Rank at PBC. So again, I think that's good for the fighters. It's gonna I think in a sense, it's really good that and in this sense, right? In this sense, I have to thank Turki Alalshikh because we for years, I remember coming on here all those years, 2017, 2018, 2016, back in the day. I remember coming on YouTube and I used to get very frustrated that we couldn't get certain fights. Like I think about, fights like Gary Russell versus Leo Santa Cruz that didn't happen. All those years that Crawford and Spence didn't happen. In a weird way, as much as I want to criticize Turki Alalshikh, I got to thank Turki Alalshikh because it took Turki Alalshikh and this war chest from Saudi and him bringing Dana White into boxing. It took Turki Alalshikh for Bob Arum and Al Haymon to actually, like, I guess, start talking and doing, like, thinking about doing business together, which should be a learning lesson to promoters and people in life that if you don't do if you don't have integrity and do what you're supposed to do in the first place, eventually you're going to be forced to do what you were supposed to do in the first place. So it's a great thing. It's a great thing, and in that regard, I will thank Turki Alalshikh for that. Now, the big issue here, and the thing that I think that Arum and Haymon are going to have to work through, because at this moment in time, on this fine date of March 30th, 11:16 Eastern Standard Time, at this moment in time, Top Rank's in a situation where the ESPN deal is going to expire soon. There's not going to be a Top Rank on ESPN moving forward, right? So they got to find a new network deal. PBC is currently in line with Amazon Prime. They've only gotten a certain amount of dates. There's been criticisms of Al Haymon not being able to keep his stable busy. So I think if the play here from both of them is to work together, they're going to have to secure a network deal that's mutually beneficial for both of them. And I'll tell you this: you talk about Bob Arum, who's got a lifetime of experience in the boxing game. You talk about Al Haymon, who's got a lifetime experience, and not just in beyond just boxing, like in the entertainment business. When you put together what these guys have done in their respective careers in promotion, I don't think anybody should put it past Arum or Haymon to have the ability to secure a network deal, especially Al Haymon, right? Because Al Haymon, he's got plenty of contacts from his days in the music industry, beyond boxing. So I have no doubts that if this is truly the play, they're going to work with each other, that they can secure a network deal. Because maybe PBC will venture away from Amazon Prime. I'm just thinking out loud here. These aren't like facts. I'm just thinking out loud here. If PBC is having a problem with Amazon Prime getting the amount of fights they want in Top Rank, and their deal with ESPN is expiring, maybe PBC and Top Rank can come together, right? Come together, unite on a united front to go ahead and maybe as a unit renegotiate ESPN deal, because people forget that when PBC first started 10 years ago, there was once upon a time PBC on ESPN. Think about some of the early PBC fights like Danny Garcia versus Paulie Malignaggi. That was PBC on ESPN. So both networks, both promoters, both entities have had a working relationship with ESPN. So I think that could be a really good idea for them to work with each other. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to seeing how this works out, because as this tweet right here says from Clay Stevenson on Twitter, hell is frozen over. PBC and Top Rank are working with each other. 10 years ago, Arum's trying to sue Al Haymon and put him out of business, and for antitrust laws being violated. Now they're trying to come together against the Saudi Arabian guy who's trying to create a monopoly in boxing. So ain't that crazy? And I guess, like, Don King's old quote was always correct. Don King used to always say, and he still says to this day, he says that working together works. So, they didn't want to work together then. They're going to have to work together now. So what do you guys make of this? What do you guys make of this? Because the way I see it is, if Arum and Haymon are going to work together and collaborate on a consistent basis, not just on, like, like for big fights too, not just like lower level fights or mid level fights. I'm saying big fights. If they're gonna collaborate more to make the big fights happen, the big cross promotional fights happen, to compete with Turki Alalshikh and Saudi Arabia, then I think it'll be good for boxing because it's gonna force Saudi to actually run a legitimate business. TKO Boxing has already revealed their pay scales for fighters. They said that they want to pay world champions $750,000 for a world title defense, which really is not a lot for world champions to only be getting $750,000 for a world title defense. That's not really like a ton of money, and especially if those world champions have commercial value. So I think it's going to force Saudi's hand to actually have to not just make big fights, because Turkey, to his credit, has made some big fights. Like he made Usyk versus Fury, he made Beterbiev versus Bivol, but he's going to even have to raise the bar. He's going to have to make fights that are not just big within the realms of the hardcore boxing community. No, he's going to have to make fights that are big for boxing in the commercial sense, that are beyond the realms of the hardcore boxing community. It's going to force Dana White to actually pay these fighters a competitive personal marketplace. And what this means is that it's good for the fighters. The fighters are going to be in a position to make good money. They're going to be in a position to like earn a honest and fair living from the sport. And what it should mean is that fans are going to get the fights they want to see, because again, this is how it works in anything. I made this analogy in one of my videos. I'll make the same analogy here. It's like video games. I play a lot of video games, right? Just to show you guys. Look, I'm sitting next to my video games. I still play PlayStation 2. I still play games like NBA Ballers. I still play games like Fight Night 2004. I still play games like FIFA World Cup 2002. I still play games like Onimusha 2. The Samurai's Destiny. I still play PlayStation 2 from time to time when I have time, right? So video games are really, really good when you have multiple companies putting out a great product, because it forces the other developers, other companies, to put out a great product themselves. And the people that buy video games are the biggest winners in all this, because they get great video games, and the people that make these games are forced to continue to improve the games. Like, look at Madden, right? Madden has not been a great game for like 20 years. Madden's been trashed for like a solid 15 to 20 years. And a big part of that is because the NFL and Madden have a direct partnership. And so like 2K can't make the NFL game. NFL Blitz doesn't exist anymore. But back in the day, when you had Madden, when you had NFL Blitz, when you had NFL Game Day, when you had NFL 2K, the NFL games were a lot better. So it's that same principle applies in boxing as well. If you have PBC and Top Rank making the biggest and best, most competitive events and fights in the sport, then it's going to force, Matchroom Boxing, Golden Boy, the Turki Alalshikh Sphere to continue making great fights as well. And the biggest winners in that are you guys and myself, the boxing fans, the people that love the sport, the people that go to fights, people that watch fights week by week, the people that really love and live and die and breathe this sport. So that's pretty much what I have to say about that. I hope that Bob Arum and Al Haymon can make the big fights quickly and swiftly. And as far as like what kind of big fights could they make? Before I get to your comments, because I know I'm sure I got a lot of comments. I want to unpack, what potential big fights PBC and Top Rank could make, because like right now, just looking at the landscape. If you go to the welterweight division, one good cross promotional fight I see they can make would be like maybe like a Brian Millman Jr. versus Mario Barrios, unification fight, PBC Top Rank. That's a good fight. If you go down to maybe like 140, Teofimo Lopez, Gary Anton Russell, that's a good fight. That's a good PBC versus Top Rank fight. One of the biggest PBC Top Rank fights that never happened is Lomachenko versus Tank Davis. And although Lomachenko is older now, that's still a fight that if it were to get made today or tomorrow, I think a lot of boxing fans will be interested in the fight, because those are big names. That is a big event. You got that fight. If you go down to like featherweight. I've talked up this spot. I talked up this fight a lot. Angel Leo versus Stephen Fulton rematch. That's the unification rematch. That's a great fight. And the list goes on and on. I mean, if you go to 154, there's been a lot of talk about potentially Sebastian Fedora versus Xander Zayas. So I think that'll be probably the first fight. I want to see how quickly that fight gets made because really and truthfully, Xander Zayas versus Sebastian Fedora is not a massive fight. Like it's not a fight that needs marination. Fedora is Mexican American, but just because you're Mexican American and you have an exciting style, that doesn't automatically translate into being a superstar. He just fought at the Mandalay Bay, and he could hug everybody that was in attendance because the crowd was that small. So he's not a big attraction like that, despite the things that he has going for him that normally make an attraction in boxing. Xander is a good up and coming star, and he's done some good ticket sales at the theater Madison Square Garden, but he's not no Puerto Rican megastar. So that's a fight. If that fight gets made quickly and swiftly, then I'll start believing that this is actually true. But those are just my initial preliminary thoughts on Bob Arum and Al Haymon and them potentially working with one another. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about this whole ordeal with them working with each other? Let me see. Shout out to everybody here. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Let me see. Let me read a couple comments.